and welcome to Lyra Nara. If you follow our channel, then you know that our last video dealt with the relationship between your gut microbiome, so the fauna and flora, the microbial fauna and flora in your gut, and how important it is to keep it balanced for your overall health. And we looked specifically at gastrointestinal disorders, but not only, also at how it is important to treat acne. We talked about probiotics, prebiotics and symbiotics. And we promised you in the last video that we're gonna have an extra presentation on what is known as psychobiotics. And here in this video, we're gonna talk about specifically the relationship between your gut, your brain, and your neuroendocrine system. And that means that we're gonna have a look at how important your gut microbiome is for your mental health and for your emotional health. So, without further ado, let's dive right into this very interesting subject. And let's start with some facts. Did you know that approximately 80% of Americans suffer from anxiety disorders that are characterized by apprehension and fear, which negatively affects their overall quality of life? Did you also know that your gut bacteria can influence your mood? Well, that's a fact. The bacteria in your gut holds immense power over you, and they can influence how you respond to stress. They can change your mood, your immune system, and your hormonal system, as we will see. Hippocrates, the founding father of medicine, once said that all diseases begin in the gut. And hundreds of recent studies show that all mental disorders, emotions, your mood, even neurodegenerative diseases are no exception. Such neurodegenerative diseases as anxiety, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, ADHD, sensory processing disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, psychosis, and autism, amongst others. And pharmaceutical treatments such as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs for short, and benzodiazepines manipulate the levels of neurotransmitters in your brain. And although these medications may provide temporary relief, they are often ineffective and can have serious side effects. Anti-anxiety medications fail to address the lesser-known contributor to depression, anxiety, and other mood disorders, and that is your gut dysfunction. Because the brain and your gut communicate via a gut microbiome brain axis, and a growing body of literature indicates that a disrupted gut microbiome may contribute to a variety of cognitive and mood disorders. So what does the gut microbiome do? First, it breaks down the undigestible products such as fibers and plant-based foods. It also transforms drugs, fertilizers, pesticides, toxins into digestible and soluble chemicals which can be excreted. It sends to the bloodstream and to the nervous system thousands of signals, also breaks down the resistant starch into short-chain fatty acids. It also breaks down proteins into amines and phenols. It also breaks down lignans into phytoestrogens. And the gut microbes perform different processes such as hydrolysis, deconjugation, and reduction. And the gut microbiome is programmed by multiple factors, and these connections are bilateral, so there's a feedback loop going on here. In your early embryonal life, so maternal infections, maternal stress, maternal nutrition of the born baby, here, for example, it has been shown that breastfeeding is much better than artificial nutrition. This is gonna influence your gut microbiome. It's also highly variable in children depending on where they live on the globe, as you can see here also from the graph on the bottom right. You see that the microbiome in African children is totally different from that of Italian children. And the gut microbiome also changes with your nutrition, with the supplements you take, with your medication, and the food that contain neurotransmitters. It also changes with stress, depression, anxiety, and mood. And here you have also another interesting graph at the bottom where you see that, for example, certain foods such as bananas have are very high in dopamine. Then you have the bacteria, the protozoa, and fungi that play a very important role, and what foods contain them. Cheese, for example, contains tyramine. Now let's talk about the gut bacteria, autonomous nervous system, brain axis. We have over 100 trillion gut microbes, and their genes outnumber our human genes by a factor of 400. Gut microbes also generate about 500,000 biomolecules to communicate with all our organs and especially with our brain. The brain and the gut can interact directly through the vagus nerve, which is the ANS parasympathetic part, and it connects, of course, the central nervous system to the heart, lung, and our digestive tract, as you can see also from the graph here on the right. And the vagus nerve can be activated by many neuroactive molecules that are found in our gut. Some gut bacteria synthesize neurotransmitters including GABA, serotonin, dopamine, and neurotransmitter modulators like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, also known as BDNF for short. BDNF is a member of the neurotrophin family of growth factors which are related to the canonical nerve growth factor. Neurotrophic factors are found in the brain and the periphery of the brain. More than 90% of the body's total serotonin and more than 50% of the body's total dopamine are synthesized in the gut and not in the brain. Dietary fiber is broken down by gut bacteria into anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs for short. And those SCFAs stimulate the sympathetic and autonomic nervous system with neurological benefits. One example is butyric acid, which has been shown to slow down the progression of Parkinson's and Huntington's diseases in animal models. The gut microbiota are also very involved in the release and degradation of hormones such as insulin, glucagon, leptin, and estrogen. Neuroendocrine cells comprise about 1% of the cells along the protective gut lining called the epithelium, and these cells release over 20 neuroactive signaling molecules including neuropeptide Y, oxytocin, ghrelin, and calcitonin gene-related peptide. Altering the gut microbiota with antibiotics or probiotics can either damage or improve memory, further supporting the role of the gut in your brain function. We also have strong evidence that the gut microbiota regulate pain perception, impact the protective nerve sheath covers called myelin, and influence neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to reorganize and rewire from good and bad inputs. And because of the active gut microbiome brain axis, anxiety and other mood disorders can be influenced by the stability and diversity of the gut microbiome. Then we also have an axis, a connection between the brain, the gut microbiome, and our peripheral immune system that you can see in this graph here. So there is a feedback loop between our central nervous system, our peripheral immune system, and the gut microbiota, which goes in both directions. And in the graph here on the right, you can see the gut microbial changes, the immunological changes they cause, and the effects they have on the CNS function. Preclinical and clinical studies have clearly shown bidirectional interactions with the brain-gut microbiome axis. the gut microbes communicate to the central nervous system through at least 3 parallel and interacting channels involving nervous, endocrine and immune signaling mechanisms, as we have also seen from the previous graphs. And the brain can affect the community structure and function of the gut microbiota through the autonomic nervous system. How does it do it? It does it by modulating the regional gut motility, intestinal transit and secretion, and gut permeability, and potentially also through the so-called luminal secretion of hormones that directly modulate microbial gene expression. A biological model is proposed that posits circular communication loops amid the brain and gut microbiome, and in which perturbation at any level can propagate dysregulation throughout the whole circuit. A series of largely preclinical observations implicates alterations in brain-gut and gut microbiome communication in the pathophysiology of irritable bowel syndrome, obesity, and several psychiatric and neurologic disorders. Continued research holds the promise of identifying novel therapeutic targets and developing treatment strategies to address some of the most debilitating, costly, and poorly understood diseases. Let's talk in a little bit more detail about how this gut microbiome-brain connection works. So we have enterochromaffin cells, ECC, that are shown in green here in the graph, that contain more than 90% of the body's serotonin, or 5-HT. And 5-HT synthesis in ECCs is modulated by the so-called SCFAs and 2BAs that are produced by spore-forming Clostridia, which increase their stimulatory actions on ECCs with increased dietary tryptophan availability. And the ECCs communicate with afferent nerve fibers through synapse-like connections between neuropod-like extension and afferent nerve terminals. The autonomic nervous system can activate ECCs to release 5-HT into the gut lumen, where it can interact with the gut microbes. And TPH1 here in the graph is tryptophan hydroxylase type 1. The gut microbiota communicate with the gut connectome, the network of interacting cell types in the gut that include neuronal, glial, endocrine, and immune cells via microbial metabolites, while changes in gut function can modulate gut microbial behavior. The brain connectome, the multiple interconnected structural networks of the central nervous system, generates and regulates autonomic nervous system influences that in turn alter gut microbial composition and function indirectly by modulating the microbial environment in your gut. And the gut microbiota can communicate to the brain indirectly via gut-derived molecules acting on afferent vagal and/or spinal nerve endings, or directly via microbe-generated signals. Alterations in the gain of these bidirectional interactions in response to perturbations such as psychosocial or gut-directed, meaning diet-related, medication-related, or infection-related stress, can alter the stability and behavior of the system, and this manifests as brain-gut disorders. And in these two graphs, you can see very well the feedback loop between the microbiota and your brain pathways with your central nervous system. And here you see the correlation and causation between the brain, with the behavior and cognition, the food-derived substrates and neurochemicals, your microbiota, the uptake into portal circulation, and the so-called enteric nervous system. So you don't have to understand everything here, but the important message is that there is a feedback loop between your brain pathways and your microbiota that goes both ways. There is also a third connection, a third axis, and that is your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis. That means that a healthy gut promotes a normal stress response through the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis for short. And the gut microbiota is essential to the development and function of this HPA axis, and there is a critical development window when the colonization must occur for the HPA axis to function normally. And as the gut microbiota mediates the stress response, stress can in return alter the gut microbiota, so this is a two-way street, as we've seen also from the previous graphs. And stresses like maternal separation early in life or prolonged restraint induce significant changes in the gut bacterial profile. Most likely, a person's individual response will depend on the gut microbial diversity, gut wall integrity, diet composition, and overall health. Differences in the gut microbiome composition have been found in both animals and humans with mood disorders. Similarly, several human studies have found microbiota differences between patients with anxiety and/or depression compared to healthy control groups. In one small study, lower levels of bacterial genus called the Fecalis bacterium correlated with more severe depression. Gut dysfunction, also known as dysbiosis, can lead to anxiety and mitigate anxiety-like behavior. After pathogenic infection, for example with Campylobacter jejuni or Citrobacter amalonaticus bacteria, you will develop anxious and abnormal behaviors through activation of the amygdala, which is a brain region that's often implicated in anxiety. In another study, mice given oral antibiotics showed altered fecal microbiota, increased anxious behavior, and increased BDNF expression in the hippocampus region of the brain, all of which were resolved within a few weeks after stopping the antibiotics. When antibiotics were given to germ-free mice, no changes in behavior or BDNF expression were seen, indicated that the gut microbiome was indispensable for these alterations. Researchers also performed fecal microbiota transplants between two strains of mice with known behavioral differences. When the more timid and anxious mice were colonized with microbiota from the less anxious type, the mice increased their exploratory behavior and showed decreased anxiety also. In reverse, when the less anxious mice were colonized with microbiota from the more anxious type, the mice decreased their exploratory behavior. These behavioral changes were not accompanied by changes in neurotransmitter levels in the brain, further demonstrated that anxiety and other mood disorders have influences beyond the brain. The intestinal microbiota influences brain chemistry and behavior independently of the autonomic nervous system, the gastrointestinal specific neurotransmitters, or inflammation. Intestinal dysbiosis might contribute to psychiatric disorders in patients with bowel disorders. Now that we understand how important a healthy gut microbiota is for your overall mental health and your resistance to stress and your emotions, let's see how we can restore and maintain a healthy gut microbiome naturally. So a healthy gut should have a very diverse, stable and robust microbiome with high gut lining integrity. Unfortunately, many factors present in our modern society contribute to gut damages. If you suffer from mood disorders like anxiety or a host of other conditions like eczema, obesity and gastrointestinal disturbances, healing your gut might provide the relief you're looking for. So start with these steps. Stop using antibiotics and NSAIDs, so painkillers. Try to treat naturally, for example through herbs and homeopathics. Look at the gut dysbiosis, the bacterial and the parasite disorders. Some recommended herbs here are grapefruit extract, also known as citricidal, black cumin extract, buckwheat, oregano and thyme EO, olive leaves extract, anise, Angelica sinensis extract, dandelion extract, curcuma, and vivid artemisinin. Also, try to eliminate from your nutrition inflammatory foods like refined carbohydrates, fats and meat overeating, and also excessive usage of industrial oils. Avoid also inadequate or reduce your fiber intake. Reduce also wherever possible your chronic stress. Try to eliminate high alcohol consumption. Also supplement with probiotics, chondroitin sulfate, EFA, vitamin D3 and MK7, and vitamin A. You can also use mushrooms such as lingji, shiitake, and agaricus blazei. And always try to treat naturally, avoid antibiotics as mentioned, all the pathogens that might be present, especially the parasites, and here we offer a natural formula for many gut pathogens. Just give us a call, 1-888-773-3196. Try to eat more fiber, meaning flaxseed, chia seeds and inulin, because the fiber feeds the microbiome and it's a prebiotic, and low fiber diets reduce microbial diversity. Also consider prebiotic supplements therefore. You can also drink bone broth. Bone broth and other sources of collagen and glycine can repair your gut integrity. It's also recommended that you consume naturally fermented foods like sauerkraut or kefir or yogurts, raw milk and kimchi. And colostrum also works really well. And the researchers coined the term psychobiotics to describe probiotic strains with the potential to impact your psychological health. Several human clinical trials have shown that probiotic administration can reduce stress, improve sleep quality and memory. Specifically, those probiotics called Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus casei, Bifidobacterium bifidum and Bifidobacterium longum. They have all improved scores of anxiety and or depression in human clinical trials. If you've tried above tips and still have gut issues, probiotic supplements could make the difference. A dizzying number of probiotic supplements are on the market, but this can be categorized into 5 main varieties. First is Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a healthy fungus. We've talked extensively about Saccharomyces boulardii in our last video. If you haven't watched it yet, please do so after this one, of course. Then we have Lactobacillus strains and Bifidobacterium strains. We also have soil-based or spore-forming probiotics, or EMA, and there is also a healthy form of E. coli according to Nissl. As it will take a few weeks to notice a difference, finding the most beneficial probiotic supplement could be a process of trials and errors. And if you have any questions about psychobiotics, probiotics, prebiotics, etc., all the subject of this we've discussed here, please do not hesitate to give us a call, 1-888-773-3196. That is 1-888-773-3196. We love to talk to you and advise you on what is best for you. If you've enjoyed this presentation, please also do not forget to like, share and subscribe, and hit the notifications button so you don't miss out on the weekly health-related content that appears on this channel. And with all that being said, stay healthy. Until next time.